on your paper at the top, I have the teacher, the influence of the teacher equals the school incarnate. So the teacher actually is the school. You walk in this building and you see chairs and desks and you see books, curriculum material, posters on the wall. And you can have whatever in the school, but it's when the teacher walks in the room. The teacher is the one who makes the school. And when I say incarnate, we think of Jesus coming. The teacher, God, came to earth in human form. When Jesus showed up, you were looking at God. He was God incarnate. It's a mystery. Well, when the teacher walks in, the teacher is the school in flesh. The teacher is the one that really makes the school happen. The teacher makes or breaks the school. So it's by far the most important part of the school. And I'll just say a few things about the teacher as a person. Let me read a little poem here first about Mark Hopkins. Mark Hopkins sat on one end of a log, and a farm boy sat on the other. Mark Hopkins came as a pedagogue and taught as an elder brother. I don't care what Mark Hopkins taught, if his Latin was small and his Greek was null. For the farm boy he taught, thought he, all through the lecture, time, and the quiz. The kind of man I want to be is the kind of man Mark Hopkins is. You know, they say that a teacher who's a teacher can teach anything. A student will study anything with that teacher, even Latin. Because there are sometimes when people go to seminars like this, whatever, sometimes they don't care what the topic is. They want to hear a particular person. You know, whatever he's saying, I don't know what he's saying, whatever he's saying, I want to hear him talk. Because there's something about the person as a person. You come with your whole self into the classroom and you engage with your pupils as a person. And you want to, as a teacher, you want to be the person for your students that you need to be. You invite them, you inspire them, you lead them, and it's very important to also like your students. As we think of the teacher as the school incarnate. So we know we're supposed to love. That's a biblical command. When you love is an action, it's something that you do. And as a teacher, you prepare lessons for your students, you check their work, you explain things, you help them. But it's possible to do what needs to be done and not necessarily like it. Do we have any control over whether we like something or not? Liking is more of a feeling. What about, let's go with food. Can you if there's something that you don't like, maybe asparagus or something like that, can you actually change that feeling? Can you learn to like something that you don't like? What do you think? You're saying, yeah, how do you go about liking something you don't like? You just say, I like this now. Can't just do that. What do you do?
Change your attitude. Change the attitude.
Change your attitude. How do you change your attitude?
I guess.
Well, we can talk about that for a while, but coming back, it is very helpful if you like your students. And they know whether you're doing it. They know whether you're pleased when they walk into the room. And if there's a certain day that Johnny is absent, and you think, oh good, we're going to have a good day. John's not here today. If you find yourself feeling that way, then it's time to work on something with your attitude. Because your attitude, the feel that you have towards your students does, at least, it comes through. They sense it, even if they don't put it into words. And so, the students know, we'll talk about the school incarnate, the students know whether you're pleased to have them present or not. And so you want to be what you need to be. You want to your student to look up to you, to trust you, and so forth. Well, let's move on. I have more to say about the next point. the influence of togetherness. There are many opportunities in school to have shared experiences. If you want to jot something down, I would suggest that you jot down shared experiences. And that's what my picture there is to illustrate. You see a teacher looking at a globe and 3 students looking at a globe. And there's a little triangle superimposed on that. The one point of the triangle is pointing up towards the teacher. The other point is pointing towards the globe, which is the subject that they're studying. And the third point is pointing towards the student. The point of this illustration is that somehow there, you can see visually there, they're focused on something about the globe. I don't know what it is, but they're looking at something. And the attention is on the subject. The attention isn't on the teacher. The attention isn't on the other students posturing with each other. It's on the subject. And there's, you can tell by the expressions that they're somewhat maybe fascinated or interested in this. And let's think of some ways that you can have shared experience. Another word, shared experiences bring a certain form of intimacy. An illustration that applies to this would be trip reunions. My sister and brother-in-law went on one of these Anabaptist heritage tours to Europe with a group of people, with a tour guide, and they traveled to Switzerland and some other places in South Germany, including, quote, the Anabaptist Cave. You ever heard the Anabaptist Cave? It was a place where people gathered together to worship when they weren't allowed to worship. They were being persecuted there in Switzerland. I've never been there, but this group of people were from various parts of the country, Ohio, Virginia, Pennsylvania, and most of them had not met each other before that. But as a result of this 10-day trip, traveling together with a tour guide, having a shared experience, they have several times since then had a reunion. The most recent one was in Homestead somewhere, somebody's home. And my sister and brother-in-law traveled from Lancaster County out to Homestead specifically to attend this reunion. Now, what was that? Why would you drive 300 or 400 miles to get together with a group of people that you had never known before, and you actually don't interact with today anymore either? Why would you do that? What do you think motivated them together? Any thoughts? Yeah. Were you?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Have any of you ever gathered together with a group and had kind of a reunion? Okay, why? Why did you go?
Because of the shared experience.
Okay.
We did a Israel and Switzerland tour just this past summer. We were in Farmington, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Specifically for that.
The same kind of group? Okay. And what do you do when you get together? What kinds of things do you do?
We actually had more time to visit than we did on the tour. My wife commented that was such a good experience. The reunion.
So on the tour, there's all this new things. You're taking all this in and doing it together. It's almost like you don't have time to process this together. And yes. And so now I'm pointing that out to point out that when a group of people, and in this case you probably had a tour guide too that led you, when think of the teacher as being the tour guide and the students as being the tourists. When you have a shared experience, when you do something together, there's a certain amount of intimacy, a certain kind of intimacy that you have together. Maybe you laugh together about something. Maybe you're curious together about something. So let's think of about 6 different kinds of shared experiences. If you want to jot something down under I wrote togetherness, there's one kind of shared experience is hard work. Hard work. What do you mean by hard work? Well, memorizing the multiplication tables through 12 or 13. 8 times 8 is 64, right? 5 times 9, 81. Just getting that down. Some children sometimes, I can't do all that. Hey, you can, actually, you can. And learning how to solve difficult kinds of problems. Memorizing a poem, memorizing a difficult passage. When the whole group together works hard at something, when you succeed, there's nothing quite like it. We did. Think of the old story of the I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. And when you work hard at something, and many kinds of sport are hard, developing skills, memorizing something, mastering something, we're going to memorize all the states and the capitals, and that's the law. And so your students will value the experience of working hard together. Another kind of shared experience, if you want to jot a second one down, would be I'll call a journey. You journey maybe in your imagination. This fits well with history class or with geography class, and you kind of present it as if we're doing an imaginary trip to India. And as we study India, we'll learn something about the climate and the difference in their customs and their language and some of the strange customs they used to have, like the widow burning, and of course how the transportation is different, and so on. And so you journey together. You go back in time when you study history. And so as you learn new things together, it is in a sense almost a journey. You can't travel there physically like you do if you have to go to Israel, but you do go up there in your mind. Another kind of shared experience is a project of some kind, a project. So in our grade 7 and 8 at our school, in one year or the other, all the students in science class build a toothpick bridge. It's a 12-inch long bridge. You're given a box of toothpicks, and you have glue and 2 strips of cardboard. So there's certain parameters, and you have to be able to drive a matchbox car through the bridge. Okay? So you study trusses, and any student who went through our school, this could be 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, they all have had that experience. How much did your toothpick bridge hold? We break them down. And another year, another project they all do is building a balloon burster. It's a Rube Goldberg type of contraption. Every student is given a balloon and a mousetrap. And from there on, it's up to you to use your imagination. There have to be at least 3 discrete events. So you can use a marble roller, you can use a candle and a string, Napoleon, sand and a funnel and whatever. But when this contraption is finished, you begin it somehow. Sometimes students begin it by taking a lighter and lighting a candle with a string over it. And then once the candle burns, you have to allow the string burns through, and then that releases something else. This thing falls over and dumps sand into a funnel, and then that goes down, and something else happens, and then the marble starts being down. The marble roller comes off, hits the mousetrap, snaps and pulls the string, or something else, and boom! The needle goes into the balloon, bursts the balloon. And so it's everybody does this, and obviously they work in pairs to do it, and you do develop some skills. It's actually develop some engineering skills, and you build something. They read Around the World in 80 Days in those years. And they also, this is grade 7 and 8, they also write a biography. They interview an older person, and they learn how to interview, and then they write a small biography of the person about what their works. A little aside there, one year there was a Haitian family lived in our community for 2 years, and they had 3 boys that were in our school for 2 years, and 2 of them were grade 7 and 8. Anyway, so that was back in 2000. Just a couple years ago, those 3 boys are now men. Got in the area, they live in Atlanta now. But they stopped by our school one day on a Friday afternoon when the students were cleaning. And of course, these are big men now, jovial men, and Haitians, they can be very jovial. And the principal is my son. He was a classmate of some of them. Anyway, it was a good time to be there. This was a Friday afternoon, and the students were cleaning, doing their weekly cleaning. And my son Jeremy told the students that, these fellows, they were students there one time. And you can imagine, they were students here, they couldn't imagine this. And then one of these fellows said to, what grade are you in? He said, 7th grade. He said, did you make a toothpick bridge? Yeah, we did. And did you read around the world in 80 days? Yeah, we did. All of a sudden, there was this connection. We actually, I guess maybe you were here one time. But that's an example of doing projects together as a shared experience. Another kind of shared experience is story time. It's one of the most intimate times you can have with your students. After lunch, I'm going to read to your students. After lunch, you sit there quietly and the teacher reads a story, reads through a book. And everybody is having the same experience at the same time. I don't remember much about 3rd grade, so it's quite a few years back. But one thing I do remember is the feeling of just sitting there after lunch, hearing our teacher read to us. There's a certain kind of togetherness, a certain kind of bonding. There's a certain, when we listen to a good story together. Sometimes it's scary, sometimes it's sad, might have to draw some tears, sometimes it's funny, whatever. And the teacher is in a position to create or enhance these shared experiences. And another kind of shared experience would be a creativity type thing, where the students are asked to maybe write poems or write stories or draw something, and you, as a student, do something that you otherwise would not have done. And this is part of the school project or curriculum, and with a creative project, it's not a particular skill that you need to learn necessarily. I don't necessarily know what you're going to write, but if we all work at a project where we write stories or poems or draw something, or maybe write a new verse for a song, or maybe even a new song, it's a shared experience. And my last comment would be simply developing as a person. There are many opportunities to help your students develop character, whether it's stick-to-itiveness, perseverance, or taking a risk. And we do this together, these shared, and your students will really, they might not think about it, but they will have that feel. And the teacher has the potential to guide the students through this shared experience where we do things together and can influence students for life. Let's go to another category here, influence versus authority. When you have authority, you have direct control. You can ask your students, let's open our books and turn to page 16. We're going to do these problems. So you have the authority to assign work. But you know what? When the students are at home, or especially after they leave your room, when they're no longer your student, that authority ends. And it's perfect. You don't have authority over people who are not your students. But influence is entirely different. You can have authority without influence. A student might, well, because I'm here, I have to do this, so I'll jump through these hoops while I'm here. But as soon as I am out of here, no, I'm not doing that anymore. And so take something as simple as writing neatly. If I have to do it for no writing neatly, I'll write it neatly because I have to. But if I don't have to, it's not like that. All right, that would be authority. But influence, can you influence your students in the way that they want to, way need to be, even if it's not graded in the rest of their life? So that's the question to ask. The influence goes beyond, and we hear this expression sometimes that more is caught than taught. There are many ways to teach, and one of the ways is by example and influence. Something else to think about with this influence. It's entirely possible for fellow classmates who have no authority whatsoever in the classroom to have influence. Is it cool to offer answers to questions in class? Put your hand up. If you have a question, everybody just sits there. Why? Well, maybe because a certain person doesn't. If you don't, we're not going to ask questions either. Do students have influence over other students? Well, that can be a good thing if it's in a good way, but if it's a bad influence, you want to counter that. Now, the question is for teachers, hopefully we have influence. Hopefully we have influence in addition to authority. And let's think of a few things, things to want to influence our students, or some categories that we can influence. One kind of influence we want to have is over our students' thought habits or their attitudes. For example, what they think of themselves. So a student can easily have an I can't attitude. I can't do this. My dad wasn't good at spelling. Mom wasn't good at spelling. I won't be good at spelling either. I can't. Or related to that would be I'm no good. Or whatever. Now, as a teacher, you can't change that feeling in a child's heart by your authority. You can start thinking that you can. But is it possible to influence your student in a way that he shifts from an I can't to at least an I'll try? Is it possible? You're saying it is. How? How do you go about doing this?
The first thing is make them feel loved.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? When it comes to changing an attitude, when it comes to changing your students' thought habits and thought patterns, we're in the territory of influence rather than, somehow you have to influence your student. Shifting from an I can't to an I can, or at least I will try. One way would be to point out things that they have done well. Student thinks he's not worth anything. Maybe he has no trouble at all with spelling. Spelling is a strange skill. It almost seems you to have it, you don't. I'm one of those people that I just spell words. If I look at a word that's not spelled right, I just see it, it's not spelled right. And it's not something I learned, it's simply, I guess, a gift that God gave. There are other things that I don't have without working hard at it. But if a student thinks that he's worthless, you can maybe point out some things that you do well. You're able to, maybe it's to explain yourself well, or you come up with good questions. So at least point out things that you can do well, and also point out that all of us, everybody has strengths, has gifts, everybody has relative weaknesses or challenges. It's just a question of what they are. And that's one way of getting it. So another way you can influence your students or work at influencing is their attitude towards what's important. What's important about life? What matters? Why do you have to learn this? What's the point of doing this? Does this really matter? Well, there's a way of influencing students to I don't try to just explain how things will be used in everyday life in the future, because that's not really a very powerful motivation to have to learn something. Some things are useful in the future, but more importantly, just life is interesting. the world is interesting. And there are fascinating things to understand about God's world or about yourself. And there are many things you don't have to know. You don't have to know when you use your diaphragm, but in your breathing. But it might be interesting to notice that when you take a breath like this, you're using you're expanding your rib cage. But if you pant like a dog, then you're using your diaphragm, and that's just kind of interesting to see. You can't necessarily use that information, but it's interesting. So what's important relating to that is another opportunity to influence is to help your students to care, to do what they do with their might. I've said already that if I ever get a vanity plate on my car, we call it vanity plates in Pennsylvania, where you can order what your license number is. I never got one, but I thought already it would be interesting to have one that says, I care. But you know what? If you had that, you'd have to live up to it. But if you can imagine somebody stopping along the road and out of gas and you go past them, I care. Or you pass somebody, kind of cut it in front of them, I care. So it would be something, it would be a motivation way to live up to, but I care. Do I care? And why do I care? Teacher has opportunity to influence caring about things. Do I do my work as unto the Lord? Do I do it with my might? Another huge one under influence is the teacher has the opportunity to influence students' attitude towards others. I'd like to put that word in quotes, others. Who are others? There's anybody that's different from you. It could be, if you're Mennonite, it could be Amish. If you're Texan, it could be Northerners. And it could be your attitude when you read, and this will probably come up all the time in the curriculum. When you read history, you know, the Chinese or ancient people, were they ignorant people? Now we are smart. Attitude towards homeless, immigrants, towards people in authority, towards rulers, towards people who live under dictatorships. The whole way you feel and talk about people or people groups who are different. You can cultivate an attitude that life is interesting, and in fact we should expect diversity, and we should recognize that we ourselves are others to other people. But that's really what makes much of school. Many things you study in school do involve others. When you read a story, the characters in the story, they look at things differently than what you looked at. And so the way the teacher guides the discussion, the way the teacher responds to a comment student makes, well, they were so stupid, they should know better than that. I remember somebody recently talking about how when he first read the Old Testament and read about the children of Israel, he was so, he thought those people were so stupid. I mean, why did they complain so much? I mean, come on. They went through the Red Sea and they saw God's miracles. How could they be so foolish as to do like complaining? So what's your attitude towards the children of Israel? Do you think, well, if I'd have been there, I'd have known better than that. I would have done that. Well, and so that's just an example of how you react, how you think about others. And the teacher has the opportunity to guide the students, and you could ask, oh, are you sure? Would you like to eat manna every day? Would you be satisfied with a tea sandwich and an apple 180 days a year for your lunch? Same thing? Or would you commit? Or you could ask this kind of question. In fact, I just asked it the other week in a class of substitute high school students, and that was the topic of children of Israel. I said, how many of you complained about something in the last 2 weeks? Every hand went up. And what does it take for you to complain? What what would have to happen for you to complain about something? And so there's an opportunity for you to help your students develop attitude towards others and to see themselves in comparison with others, to not take themselves too seriously. And the last thing under influence versus authority here is the opportunity to influence their attitude towards God's world. Just to see the whole world as God's world. And this world that we live in, whether it's the physical laws that govern the science and chemistry, or whether it's the people in the world, it's God's world. Moving on to inspiration, catalyst. The teacher is, in a sense, a catalyst. The catalyst is something that makes things happen without getting involved itself. In this room we have fuel, there's wood in the air, there's various things that can burn, there's plenty of oxygen. But we're not worried about fire unless if somebody took a lighter and held it long enough at something and got a fire started. Once the fire gets started, now we've had something going. But once the fire started, you can take the lighter away and she's burning. So in a sense, the teacher is a catalyst. You do certain things. The teacher's presence in the room makes a difference. The consequence. So sometimes it's just a question. And you ask, so you're sitting there, you're not thinking. A teacher might say, you know what? How many of you ever drank something with a straw, all hands go up? How many of you sucked water with a straw? Hands go up? No, you didn't. You never, ever sucked in a straw. There's no such thing. It was pushed up into your mouth from the straw. And you can just raise that question, get out. All of a sudden, no, what? Huh? Well, of course I sucked. Come on. And then, well, if you think you sucked it up, well, then defend yourself. And so it's almost like you can step out of the way now. Now you've got a question in your mind. They're not going to have any rest until they get that question answered and prove you wrong, and they're right. And they're going to find out that they were wrong and you were right. And so sometimes the teacher acts as a catalyst to get them thinking, get them doing, and then sometimes you kind of step back because if you're too involved, they don't learn as much. And so you support them, you help them, and one of the catalysts is believing in them. That's one of the exciting and scary things about a teacher, to actually believe in your students. You know what, you can do this. Do you think you can do this? You might not. Right? You can. And sometimes the confidence that the teacher has in the student is just what it takes for them to stick with something and be able to do it. My next point here is influence of the classroom home. The students, my illustration here is the turtle. And you know what? It is very risky for a turtle to stick his neck and his legs out because that neck is very flexible and soft compared to the shell. It's very safe to be in the shell and close up. And thinking of your students, they're in a sense like turtles. When they come into the classroom, if they don't, not too sure of things, all the shells are shut. And so as a class, you as a teacher, you say things, you do things. If you do the right things, the shells will start coming open. And they'll start looking out a little bit, and then they'll stick the neck out a little bit further. Is it okay? Is it safe? And if it really feels safe, and again, then they'll stick the neck way out. People talk about it. Boy, he really stuck his neck out. And when your neck is out, you're very vulnerable. But it's exciting to have your neck sticking out. Let's think of some ways that a student can be vulnerable. A student wonders, is it safe in this room? Is it safe for me to express an opinion, for example? To really express my opinion? Or will I be made fun of? Is it safe for me to show interest in a poem? Maybe you're a boy. You're a boy. You kind of really like poems. The general feel is that poetry is for sissies. So you don't let it be known that you actually like poems because you don't feel safe. Is it safe for me to show my interest? Is it safe for me to show embarrassment or to ask a question that looks stupid? I like to tell my students, when you're in school, you can ask anything. If you're not sure how to tell time, ask. We're here to learn. It's when you get out of school that people expect you to know. And it should be safe to be in this room, emotionally safe. And every student should have the feel that I belong here. And we are a group, and we are together. The teacher has opportunity to create that feeling to influence your students. And my last point here is that the teacher has opportunity to influence as a role model. Children are great imitators. They can see something done one time and they can imitate it. And that's a tremendous power. Of course, in a negative way, we hear stories of children seeing another child show a fit, and they never showed a fit, but now they see it done one time, so now they practice it themselves. Well, in a positive way, children are great imitators. So you can model all different kinds of things before your students. You can model patience, you can model perseverance, you can model interest in the subject, and you can model interest in learning, for example, love for learning. Children learn to learn from somebody who's a learner. So your students should know that you find life interesting and sometimes you learn something new. This little poem here that I have in your handout, think of what it means. It applies to a teacher too. It's kind of taken out of context. It goes like this. I love you, and as a teacher, you can maybe think of respect you, but well, they both work. Not only for what you are, but for what I am when I'm with you. So a child your goal as a teacher is you want the child, when the child is in your room, to feel secure, comfortable, wanted, respected. And so I like when I am when I'm with you. I love you not only for what you have made of yourself, but for what you are making of me. And sometimes a student, they work hard, and they don't maybe like to work hard, but at the end of the day or at the end of the year, they will, one of the highest compliments you can give. She really made us work, but we really learned. And I didn't think I could write a story, but you know what? We tried writing stories, and I actually wrote the story, and I still have it. And then the third one, I love you for the part of me that you bring out. And so students they're multifaceted. They have emotions, they have feelings, they have minds, they have attitudes, they have abilities. And part of learning, part of education involves developing as a whole person. And so maybe there was something that a student, maybe something was awakened in the student, or he was stretched in a way that he was never stretched before. And wow, it's because of what we did in that classroom, because of what that teacher did. That part of me was stretched. I discovered my chest voice. I discovered my head tones in that classroom. In conclusion, I'd like to read something that Diana Cornelison wrote. Everybody know Diana Cornelison? She taught in Oklahoma for some years.
My sister.
Pardon?
My sister.
She's your sister. Okay. You recognize this. Why teach reading comprehension to fluent readers when hundreds of my county struggle to decode words? Why waste my time in the classroom when there's really important things to do out there in the world? Why do I teach math when I could be a secretary for a great ministry? Why teach art to creative minds when I could be doing disaster response? Why teach Bible to church children when I could teach about Jesus to children who've never even heard? Why teach learning to read to youngsters when many grown men can't even read the Bible? Why do I teach phys ed to athletes when many invalids need a strong hand to guide their stiff limbs? Why teach social studies when millions of people on the globe are waiting for us to come and preach? Why teach science when I could be practicing in a medical facility? There's important things to do out there. Why go to the classroom and teach children? Here's their answer. I teach them with the prayer that every class I teach will not only equip myself, but 10 others to teach the illiterate, serve on missions, comfort the hurting, feed the hungry, aid the feeble, understand other cultures, preach the word, and heal the sick. The work that we do with our children is exponentially important. They're the ones who will go out and do those important things. And don't ever think that your work in the classroom, even though it might seem mundane, can have huge influence. Thank you.
That's good. We're going to actually pray downstairs.
Oh, okay.
So
All right.
whenever you're done, you can wrap up.
Thank you. All right. Any comments, last comments, questions? So, it's, as a teacher, by the way, we're always having an influence. It's just a question of what the influence is. But we do have opportunity to tweak the influence. Thank you.